What resources are there available for women in need? Welcome to Pro-Life Thinking, a podcast that trains you how to defend the pro-life position effectively and persuasively. I'm your host, Clinton Wilcox, and I'm joined by my co-host, Nathan Apodaca. How are you doing this morning, Nathan?
Well, pretty good, considering that most of San Diego County is in blackout right now because of fires, we're having high winds, and we're back in lockdown. So, yeah, well, pretty good all the same.
Oh, yeah. Sounds like fun. We'll get to our discussion in just a moment. I do have a few things to mention real quick before we get into the meat of it. First of all, a friend of mine, a good friend of mine named Maria Wallace, wanted me to give her a shout out on my podcast. And I thought, yeah, might as well. Not only because she's a friend, but also because I can use it to kind of transition into talking about a couple things we have going on. For one thing, I am working on getting some merchandise for the Pro-Life Thinking podcast, and currently I'm working on a T-shirt and a hoodie. So as soon as I get those made up, she's actually going to be modeling those for me. Because let's face it, she's a lot easier on the eyes than I am. So she's graciously agreed to be our model for the clothes that we're going to be creating here. But also, we've started a Patreon. If you enjoy the content that we bring to you and you feel that it's beneficial and it can benefit the people who listen to it, we would love to have you join us as financial supporters. You can always give through the Life Training Institute website, and if you do that, your donations would be tax deductible. But we also have a Patreon account set up if you'd like some perks to go along with your donations. They're not tax deductible because the podcast itself is not a nonprofit, but we do have some pretty cool perks that we're offering. You can get one-on-one training with me if you want to help improve your confidence in talking to pro-choice people. You can I can role play a pro-choice person and you can get some practice that way, or you can get some feedback on something that you're working on that you're trying to publish, those kinds of things. You can get some training there. You can also get early access to some of the projects that we may be working on, including some videos that we're going to be producing in the future, things like that. Also, I wanted to bring up that we do an audio-only podcast as well. The broadcast that we do here on YouTube, I extract the audio from that and put it on the audio podcast. But if you want to get the most out of pro-life thinking, it would actually behoove you to listen to our audio-only podcast as well, because we occasionally do interviews and things that are only available in the podcast. For example, we recently interviewed Hendrik van der Breggen, a recently retired philosopher from Canada who published a book, and we had him on our podcast to do an interview. It didn't work out where we could have him on the video broadcast on YouTube, so we ended up just doing an audio interview with him. And the interview we did with him actually went up this past Friday, so you can listen to that interview if you go to iTunes and look up our podcast, or you can go to the Blog Talk Radio website, which is blogtalkradio.com/prolifethinking. All right, so now to the meat of the discussion. The guests that we have joining us today are Emily and Nathan Berning. Nathan and Emily Berning co-founded the pro-life nonprofit Let Them Live, which has saved over 60 babies from abortion since February of last year. Let Them Live provides emotional and financial support to abortion-minded moms, helping them choose life instead. Nathan grew up in Fort Wayne and attended Homestead High School. Emily grew up in Colorado, and the two of them met through pro-life work. Nathan and Emily now live full-time in Fort Wayne and just celebrated their second wedding anniversary. Emily and Nathan, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Hi.
Thanks for having us.
I think also congratulations are in order on your second anniversary.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I joked with Nathan that it feels like 10 since we work together and we basically spend all of our time together. So we get a lot of good married time together. So
and COVID's basically been 11 many years so far.
So. Right. Well, we're definitely in favor of marriages and babies here on this podcast. So congratulations there. Yeah. So So we are, of course, recording this interview live. And if you're listening in, you can, of course, comment, and we'll post your comments up here on the video. And if you have any questions for Emily and Nathan, you can also post those in the comments, and we'll get those asked of our guests as well. So, Nathan, you set up the interview, so I'll go ahead and pass the baton over to you and let you take the lead here.
Right. Well, I guess I should say that Nathan, you have the previous distinction of being the only other Nathan that we've had on the podcast, and then you guys are also the first married couple we've had on the podcast. So you guys feel special for 2 reasons. So just to get right off the bat, where did the idea? What is Let Them Live? What exactly does Let Them Live do, and why did you guys start it up?
Well, Let Them Live kind of started with us financially supporting a single mom a few years ago. Before that, it was actually just kind of an umbrella for us to do pro-life activism and to train pro-life students. But it kind of transformed when we actually wrote a check for $1,200 to a mom, and she canceled her abortion. And that was something that Emily and I did out of our personal bank account. And after we did that, we were like, okay, is this something that we could keep doing? But it actually took us about 7 more months to find another mom that was willing to do that. Once we found that next mom, we started to kind of create a model for basically crowdfunding to help these moms. And it just kind of kept snowballing from there, because early on, we were writing like a $1,200 check or, raising $2,000 through a crowdfund. But that wasn't it wasn't a hugely significant change for that mom necessarily. That might have been like 1 month's rent or, food for a couple of months. But now at this point, the fundraising has gone up a lot. So our focus is doing a fundraiser for whatever the needs are of that mom while she's pregnant and after she's pregnant. So we do a fundraiser. Generally, it lasts for about a year of support, and then we do material support after that for up to 2 years.
Yeah, and we found, when we kind of started this, we did our research and we found that 73% of women that have abortions do it because of financial reasons. And we don't necessarily have the financial capability to kind of bankroll this whole thing. So that's why we brought it to the public and said, hey, let's see if we can fundraise for this and fundraise for women that are literally on the verge of abortion because they can't pay their rent, because they can't take care of their bills, or they're really in debt. So that's just kind of how it started. And it turns out that people really like contributing to this. And it's easy to show supporters that, hey, if you donate, this money will save a life from abortion.
That's awesome. Now, you did mention that 73% of women going in for abortions or who are abortion minded are struggling with financial difficulties. I think that many pro-life people don't really understand the intricacies of that. When you've interacted with people on this issue, what exactly is going through their mind? And I guess how could pro-lifers best address somebody who comes across them who's having that difficulty?
Yeah, I think so I'll kind of like take the question backwards, but basically for pro-life people, the best thing that we can do to meet this mom where she's at, who is struggling and going to have an abortion in that kind of headspace of abortion, is to really put ourselves in her shoes. It's easy as pro-lifers to say, well, hey, just keep the baby, or just choose adoption, or, here's some diapers. But when we really get into the mindset of this woman who is terrified, her family has abandoned her, she doesn't know how she's going to get her next meal. She's got 4 other kids to feed. This is a pretty scary moment for her. And in that kind of the mix of all of that, she feels like abortion is the only option. And
she's being told that it's the only option by everybody she knows.
Exactly.
So.
The culture we live in is so like abortion focused, and it's a quick solution, and all of that stuff. So she's believing that. So as pro-lifers, what we really need to do is say, okay, like, we're going to come alongside of you, and we're going to help you out of this situation, because we know that doing this will help you to choose life.
Right. Now, do you ever get any significant pushback, or are people somewhat resistant to being helped, or are people very open to being helped?
Well, in general, I would say that there is a lot of pushback. There is a lot of resistance, especially early on, trying to get people to sign our financial support agreement, which is basically where they say, hey, I'm not going to have an abortion, and I'm going to start accepting your help. So there's a lot of counseling that goes into that. Sometimes it will be, a quicker process, but for the most part, it's going to take days or even weeks to convince a mom to cancel. So it's an ongoing conversation with our pregnancy counselors, and it got to the point where, right now we have 3 full-time pregnancy counselors, but it got to the point where they weren't able to handle it. So now we have 7 pregnancy counselor volunteers that help them to manage all these relationships because of how many moms are coming in, so that they can focus on the ones that actually need to be canceled. So we've kind of set up a process for that, and it's starting to work really well. I think if you can identify financial as the main burden, and then eliminate that, there's still going to be other burdens, but those ones are generally going to be easier to deal with.
Yeah, and the other thing too, the pregnancy counselors, after we cancel an abortion, we're not in the clear as far as this mom goes, because there are so many times where she's going back and forth and back and forth. And so our pregnancy counselors are just on call all the time, for these moms, because there is sometimes just resistance and I don't think I can do this, and things like that. So really we just have to completely surround them all the time.
I just wanted to mention, like, adoption is brought up so much by pro-lifers on our page, just in general. People bring it up, and adoption is it's a great thing. My little sister is adopted from China. So I love adoption. I think it's a great thing. Within our organization, only 1 mom out of all the moms that we've helped, and I think we're getting close to 100 now that we're actively helping, only 1 mom has actually chosen adoption. Although a lot of moms consider it, and we have that conversation with them, only 1 has chosen it ultimately.
Right. It's super rare, so this is kind of a tangent, but this is just something we see all of the time in the comments. A lot of pro-life people will say, well, she should just have an adoption, do an adoption. And I think I used to say that as well, but I've kind of heard the perspective from the moms themselves, and what they tell us is that, when people just say, oh, just give your baby up, it makes them feel like they're incapable mothers, like they're not able or like fit to be mothers, and it really hurts them because they want to keep their baby desperately. They just don't know how, and they just need some help. And so we try to get people who just kind of go in with the adoption thing to actually just help us adopt the mom and the baby, basically, and help her become the best parent that she can be.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a very big part of that. And unfortunately, I mean, I've made that comment too out of ignorance, and I think there's a tendency to forget that, this person is they're going through a crisis right now. They need to have our help and understanding, not our opinions.
Right.
Now, what does it look like? Somebody cancels their abortion. What do you guys do to help them once they have made that step? You meet their needs in the moment, and then you walk with them through the process of birth. I know that you both have gotten to meet many of the children that you've saved. And those are some of the most precious videos I've ever seen. What does it look like when you help the mother once she's given birth?
So yeah, it's totally varied. It's just based on the mom. But typically, we don't ever want to just like pull our support. So during her pregnancy, we actually kind of wean off our support just a little bit. We kind of help her, like, let's say she got a new job. We helped her get a new job. We kind of wean off our support little by little. And then she gives birth. Maybe she's not able to work for a couple of months. We will definitely support her during that time. We do a full registry for our moms as well, so that they have everything they need when their baby comes. And we have some moms that needed help 6 months after as well, with some bills here and there. We're never just going to abandon them, but we do want to make sure that they are like steady on their feet. But occasionally, we had a couple moms that gave birth back in March. One of them had reached out to me last month saying, hey, like, we just got new jobs and our paychecks haven't come in yet, but we don't have any groceries. Can you help us out? And of course, we helped them out. But ultimately it really varies, but I'd say typically like 3 to 6 months is like the range.
And most of the moms that we support have had a life-altering experience at that point. They've had almost a year to kind of clear their minds and kind of refocus. Some of them are going back to school, like Atoria, she's halfway through school. When we met her, she was actually living in her car, and she didn't have a place to go. She was kicked out of her parents' house. She was completely abandoned and being told to get an abortion. So that was an example where, her life has completely shifted to where now she's getting ready to move into her own apartment, have her independence, with her son. And it's just cool to see that. And again, she's halfway through school, and she's also helping us. She's working for Let Them Live. So she's talking to donors on the phone. And we're hiring some of the moms. We're actually bringing them onto our team to talk to donors, so the donors understand that these are real women that we're talking about that are actually struggling, and they can tell their stories to the donors.
Right. Now, what are some of those common financial concerns that many people have when they come to you? I don't know if we touched on that just yet, but I think that's going to be on a lot of people's minds is, what are the most common financial concerns that somebody might have when they're considering abortion?
Yeah, typically, so a lot of our moms live in like areas that have really high cost of living, California, New York. Those that we have a lot of moms in California. So a lot of the times, I would say rent. Just talking to our counselors and seeing all the bills that are being paid, rent is a really big one. In general, it's just bills all around. So, for example, a mom living in California, she just gets behind on her bills because she can't get enough money, from her job to make ends meet in a place like California. So, her phone bill is way past due. I mean, we've paid really past due phone bills before. I think one time we paid like an $800 phone bill. And it just kept piling up, regular utilities and like, water, electricity, things like that. Car payments are a really big one. Some debt, it depends on the debt that we'll pay. We did just pay off some student loan debt for a mom. She's trying to go back to school. She paid a huge chunk of it off earlier, but she wasn't allowed to start school in January if she didn't have her debt paid, and it was like a couple $1,000s. So we wanted her to get her degree, finish her degree, because that is going to better her life. Groceries, things like that, just kind of your everyday stuff that people typically struggle with.
Right. And I know John Ensor makes a really good point in his book on crisis pregnancy intervention when he says that a lot of people who are considering abortion, they're considering it from a perspective of crisis. They feel like they're almost in a hostage situation. I have to do this in order to get myself out of this. And what does it look like when you're negotiating with somebody or talking with somebody? What ways do you approach that sort of conversation? Because I've noticed, at least for myself, that I'm a little bit more comfortable talking with somebody about abortion and, just engaging if they disagree with me. But sometimes I find that it can actually be harder to have a conversation with somebody who is abortion minded.
Yeah.
What does that sort of conversation look like, and how do you suggest going about that?
It's hard to have those conversations because there's so much at stake,
Yeah.
But I mean, the general answer is that let them live. Like, we definitely approach that with love, because the moms that we talk to, their families, have abandoned them. The father of their child has abandoned them. They really just need somebody to say, it's going to be okay, and I'm here for you, and I'm going to be with you, and I'm your friend, and I love you, and we're family, and we'll take care of you.
And that occurs over dozens of hours of having back and forth texts and calls with them, to where they do start to see you as the person that cares the most about them. I mean, that's a universal kind of trend, because ultimately, like Emily said, they're abandoned. So if nobody else is spending any time talking to them other than saying get an abortion, or their friends don't understand their situation, and we're the only ones that are there, we're paying the bills, we're kind of filling the shoes in a way of what the dad should be doing or what her family should be doing to help her. So they do start to really have a lot of like deep appreciation and respect for the fact that you are there.
Yeah, they do. And we've had so many moms say, I can't believe complete strangers helped me when and my family wouldn't even help me. It's mind blowing to them that just, like, I think Victoria had once said, like, these two random people from Indiana, showed up in California to help me.
Like Victoria was one of the more difficult kind of experiences that we had. She's now like one of our best friends, but when we we had to like fly out to California the day before her 2-day abortion procedure, because she just was about to go and do it. After all of the conversations that we had, and we felt like she was going to choose life, we actually had to catch a red eye We drove to Detroit at like 3 a.m. We stayed up all night, drove to Detroit, and then flew out to Sacramento, actually to San Francisco, and then drove to Sacramento. So we literally were there before the abortion appointment. It took us like probably 12 hours to get there. And then we showed up, and she was just like crying. She couldn't believe that we were there, and she didn't go to her abortion. So I think I mean, every situation is different. We haven't had a lot of them where we felt like we had to do that. But if we did, then that's always an option.
Oh yeah, I always text our counseling team. Like the other day, I think I texted like 3 or 4 times because there was all these different moms that, were like, we knew we could help them, and they knew we can help them. They were just kind of going back and forth, and they're like, I just really can't do this. And I was like, tell them I will fly to them right now. If they need somebody there with them, like I will be there, This is something that is always on the table. So.
And Emily does that a lot.
I do. I'm at the airport a lot more than I'm at my own home. So
yeah, she did a lot of.
I got a lot of Marriott points.
A lot of fire points too.
So, how then would an abortion-minded woman learn about Let Them Live? Are they primarily told by pro-life friends or family members, or do you have some way online of getting your, I guess, bringing attention to someone who's considering abortion, maybe searching out an abortion clinic? Do you have some way of that? I guess the question I'm asking is there some method that you use that would attract attention to Let Them Live from someone who's just kind of like searching out what to do in case of an abortion, or is it primarily word of mouth from pro-life people that are aware of you that they might know?
So it's mostly sidewalk counselors and pregnancy centers, and then obviously our donors, because as the donor community has grown, we're at about 5,000 people that are part of the community at this point. Those people start referring moms to us as well. Mm-hmm. That's been kind of a shocking kind of change as well. We had 8 women have referred to us just yesterday. So that gives you a sense of the volume. And we're probably only running one fundraiser every 2 weeks. So we're not doing fundraisers for every mom, but just to talk about that. So we have a few different buckets. You have your bucket, which is your donors. You're trying to find donors. So we do that mostly through social media ads. And then those donors have networks, have communities, and they refer us to their pregnancy centers, and they refer us to sidewalk counselors, or they refer those people to us. So we're constantly talking to them and explaining our resource to them.
Yeah. And I had just the other day, I have friends on Facebook that are from, back in Colorado. And I just had one the other day that was like, hey, I have a coworker and her daughter is pregnant, and my coworker is wanting her to have an abortion, and just like all of this stuff. So you have like friends who know somebody mm-hmm. that is pregnant, and then we do have situations where women reach out to us directly on our social media, because our social media is growing a lot. An example is we did have a mom, you guys may have seen her story, but Mercy. Yeah. So she was in Minneapolis getting an abortion, a 2-day abortion. She was 20 weeks at Planned Parenthood. And we actually have the ultrasound, like with her name on it and everything, that says Planned Parenthood. Clear as day, this is like a 20-week baby, So she goes in, gets the ultrasound, and then they put her back in the waiting room. She's literally about to walk back and sit on the table and get that abortion, when she was scrolling through Instagram and found a Let Them Live post. And then she reached out to Let Them Live. Our social media director luckily saw it right away. And one of our counselors reached out to Mercy and said, hey, like, let me call you. And she said, I don't know where to go. And Lexi was like, just go into the bathroom. She was so scared of taking this call in Planned Parenthood. So she's in the bathroom. The craziest thing
is that she was actually on like the table about to have the abortion. Yeah. She left to go to the bathroom.
She said, I have to go to the bathroom. And Lexi called her, and then she walked out. And so that's the power of social media as well. If we, weren't on Instagram, that baby may not be here today. So it's the power of social media is huge.
There's been a few moms like that. We had an influencer mom that had, I think, 70,000 followers who, she found us through Instagram. Mm-hmm. She's just on Instagram all the time. And her baby was already born. So that's kind of cool. We see that doesn't happen as often, though.
Not usually as often, but it does show the importance of, this is kind of, off the topic of abortion, but obviously we both love free speech, and this is definitely important to us because we have been blocked on Instagram and stuff before, like,
I mean, we're constantly blocked.
We're constantly battled that.
It's the shadow banning, and then of course, unfortunately, after, and you guys know what this is like. After the election, they've just canceled all social and political ads and said, "Hey, you can't run social ads right now." So we're not even able to run social ads right now.
It's frustrating because we know lives are on the line and we know lives are saved like through the power of social media. So
yeah, one common argument that Nathan and I often hear is that pro-life people just don't care about children or women. We care about not getting an abortion before birth, and then we just set them loose after birth. But a lot of times it's just it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because one of the reasons that pro-life people can't work or can't help save or help women who have just given birth is because a lot of times they shut the door. They don't allow us to do that work, and so that's just kind of amazing.
Yeah, it is an interesting dynamic, and we're trying to like completely burst that bubble of, oh, well, you don't care about, after the birth, because that's so fake. Like, that's so not true. We totally do. And we make sure that support is there. And
speaking of pro-choicers, we actually do attract some pro-choice support because of the messaging. So when we say,
oh, cool,
hey, let's give moms another choice, let's give her the choice of life, we get a lot of people that actually are like, wow, that actually is pretty cool.
We have pro-choice donors, which is weird. I mean, weird in a great way. I just never expected that. And we have a lot of hate from pro-life people too, which has been surprising.
I remember you talking about that. I remember seeing, I think, Nathan, you had posted about some of the ridiculous comments you get from some pro-life people. I don't know what it is, but there are segments of the online pro-life community that are incredibly vile. I've dealt with it. I know, Clinton, you've dealt with it. And then I know you both especially have dealt with it. And it really makes me wonder where people's heads are at. I'm going, you're in this movement to save lives, and yet you're attacking people for actually going out and saving lives. This is nonsense. It's sheer insanity.
They call it the horseshoe for a reason when it comes to ideology. The further you go on either side, the closer you get to each other. So the people that think sometimes that they're the most pro-life people and they're these super warriors are actually abandoning moms. They don't care about the mom. They don't even really care about the baby. They just care about that they're right. That's what they care about. Right. So we have to burst that bubble and say, hey, okay, maybe you're right in this scenario. Maybe abortion really is like this. We agree it's a terrible thing, but that doesn't mean that you have to like type that out and say, oh, this woman's a whore and should close her legs or whatever.
We did have that. It was the craziest thing. We had I saw a comment on one of our posts, and this person said, she's a whore and a slut. And I like clicked on her profile, and it says Catholic, pro-life, with a Bible verse, so pro-life, and all of her. She was like just bragging about how pro-life she was, and I was like, pro-life people don't say that about women in crisis pregnancies. So we definitely have an interesting mix of.
I think that's the judgment. It's this idea of judging other people, which happens on both sides. And
it's like. It's like, way to share the love of Christ there, lady.
I was like, I don't think your comment matches your bio, but.
Right.
I think part of it is people also don't really understand how to address somebody who's in a crisis mode. I've seen this, at least for myself, is that many times when somebody's in crisis, they don't need to get an opinion. They just need to know that somebody in the world hasn't abandoned them yet. A few years ago, I helped a young woman after she gave birth. She went through a really tough time. And I helped her out, and she said, she goes, nobody else was doing that for me. Nobody else was there for me when I was in crisis. And I know John Ensor, he makes that point very eloquently in his book. He says that, somebody who's in crisis, they just need to know that somebody is there who loves them. That's all they need to know sometimes, is that, hey, the world hasn't turned its back on you entirely. There is still somebody out there who cares for you and wants to see you do well and wants to see you go through the crisis and come out on top. There's not a whole lot that can be said for some of the people think they're a lot smarter online than they actually really are.
No, that's funny that everybody likes to type out their comments online, but let's actually do something. Let's see action here. Let's make change. Let's not just sit on our computers and type abortion is murder.
And some of it is righteous anger. It's okay to be angry about what's happening.
Right.
We just have to channel it in a positive way.
Right.
So we talk about, like, we're having a team breakout session this week. We have team members that flew in to be with us, and we're talking about like the civil rights movement and the energy that basically propelled that, which is an energy of like peaceful protest.
Right.
In this circumstance, we're dealing with literally canceling an abortion, so we're saving a human being from death, which is very intense. There's a lot of emotions involved. I think early on, sometimes even we would get really mad at these moms, and it would be tough to bite your tongue, to bite the bullet, because you're listening to them and they're saying that they can't do it, and they don't even realize what they're talking about, like what they're getting ready to do. So you kind of have to bite your tongue a little bit, and we all kind of feel that, I think, in this work is, but we've gotten so much better at it over time to where now it's just second nature. We don't really get angry or anything like that when we're talking to them, because we're just used to it's the same kind of logic. It's the same pattern of thinking that we're seeing over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I got a question. I completely lost my train of thought there. I'm sorry.
It happens. It's happened to me on occasion.
Yeah. I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Clinton, did you have a question until my question comes back?
I was going to say I could hum the Jeopardy tune if that'd be helpful.
Yeah, I guess,
yeah, well, I mean,
happened before.
No, it's fine. Yeah, no question immediately comes to mind. This has been a pretty thorough discussion here. Yeah.
I'll kind of fill the gap here. This is something that
sure.
Yeah, that I talk about a lot that we hadn't talked about, and it's kind of going back to when we started Let Them Live and when we started realizing that we could pay bills for moms. So we, had, said, okay, we're going to find our niche eventually. And I think eventually we did after we paid that mom. And so then I think it was the 25th anniversary of Schindler's List. I'm sure you guys have seen Schindler's List. Yeah. I'd be surprised if you didn't, but
okay, true confessions time. I have not actually seen
Schindler's List. You gotta watch it. Okay, that's like your homework.
Watch it.
So okay. Schindler's List, I'll kind of give you a little overview, and for anybody that watches, Oskar Schindler was like good friends with the Nazis, like super rich businessman. He had his own factories. And when the World War II was going on and the Holocaust was happening, he saw what was going on, but he just didn't really think anything of it. But then throughout the movie, you can see that he's having a change of heart. He's realizing that, the Jews are people and what the Nazis are doing is wrong. But he's like, how can I help them with my money in kind of a secret way where the Nazis won't really know what I'm doing? So he goes to his Nazi friends and he's like, hey, I need some workers for my factory. So he pays the Nazis and then he gets Jews in exchange to work at his factory. Now, when they were working at his factory, they were actually making duds, like all the ammunition for the Nazi army, like all of that stuff. Like it was just all, so he keeps paying the Nazis and he gets more and more and more Jews. And he saved 1,200 Jews, which is crazy because after we had written that, like after we had given $1,200, it was just so weird that it was like the exact same number. But so at the end of the movie, he saves all of these people. The war is over and he has to get the heck out of there. So his car is ready to go, and they are all surrounding him and he's crying. He's like, I could have sold this fur coat and I could have gotten 2 more people, this ring on my finger, that's 5 more people. And he's just crying, but they're surrounding him saying, look at all the people that you saved. This is generations. And they present him with this ring that they made, and inscribed in Hebrew, it says, whoever saves one life saves the world entire. And that, when we watched that in the movie theater, it just smacked us like, oh my gosh, okay, definitely this is where we're supposed to go with Let Them Live. We're definitely supposed to use financial resources to save lives. We loved it so much, we even got it tattooed. We both have our fetus tattoo. But whoever saves one life saves the world entire. And that is like our motto, kind of like our unspoken motto that really drives us every single day.
Maybe it should be spoken more.
It should be spoken more. No, we tell everybody.
We've got so many people that are becoming little Schindlers in a way too.
Yeah.
You know, like it kind of started with us, and now we're just kind of bringing those people together. And everybody has a different ability. You know, like Emily was talking to a donor yesterday that'll probably make a really significant gift, like a 5 or 6 figure gift. She's somebody who can probably save multiple lives. But what we kind of inspire people to do is, hey, just try and save one life, you know? And we have an idea of like how much that costs, like, which is an amazing thing to be able to say, hey, it's going to cost, you know, about $25,000 to save a life from abortion. So if you write a check for $25,000, you know, shameless plug, you're going to save a life. You know, it pretty much, that's the math. That's what we've seen, is that that's the average of what it's costing us.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. It's a crazy, like, new model. I mean, it's something that has never been done before, obviously. And I think it's awesome. I mean, obviously I'm biased, but, you know, to see financial support affect these moms so greatly. And they have texted me and called me just with tears, like saying they cannot believe that people have given to them. And they're so thankful. So to see the donations play out that way, and then to see a baby come out of it is pretty crazy. Like, it doesn't get much better than that. Like, hey, if you donate, we're going to show you a baby is born.
And there is a reward for the donor too, because they get to actually see a human being that would have been dead and would not have lived without their support. I mean, that's intense.
Yeah.
I've been to a number of pregnancy resource centers throughout the country, because you know I travel around to speak and give talks and things like that. And whenever I go to give a presentation somewhere, I always like to see if I can work it out to visit a local pregnancy care center. So I've actually attended some of their fundraising dinners also. So I've kind of seen firsthand the kind of good they can do. But Let Them Live is actually the first sort of online pregnancy resource center that I've heard about. So
we love partnering with. I'm actually giving a presentation tomorrow to one of our local pregnancy resource centers, because, you know, I kind of wrote down in my notebook that we're not a replacement for them. We're just like supplement, you know, we're like a tool in their toolbox. We're a resource. And we can all kind of partner together, which is awesome. And bring all of our resources together to surround, you know, all of these moms that need our help.
I think one important distinguishing factor between us is that they're not necessarily providing financial support at that level that we're going to. There's probably a few unique examples, but most of the time when you get to that point where you've determined the mom is having the abortion and it's because of financial reasons, they're not necessarily able to resolve that. You know, because sometimes we're talking about, you know, tens of thousands. Most of the times you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars. And so imagine a big red button sitting on the pregnancy center director's desk. They're like, okay, there's no other option. And they hit that button, and then Let Them Live sends in the angels, and we bring, you know, a bunch of money and a bunch of resources, and we crowdfund from like 700 people for that mom. That's just not something that they're focused on doing. They're doing great work. I mean, they're amazing. We love the pregnancy centers. I mean, it's just
we all have different, you know, places in the pro-life movement. And I think it's important for us and for everybody, every organization, to be very specific with their mission, because we found that when we're really specific to our mission, we're more effective. And so pregnancy centers are specific to their mission, and then we can come alongside them, and we're all just focused on the little piece that we have to be focused on to make the pro-life movement work.
It's just beautiful. You know, moms walking into Planned Parenthood, sidewalk counselor stops and talks to her and says, hey, have you gotten the free ultrasound yet? She goes over to the pregnancy center. She gets the ultrasound, you know, she gets the pregnancy test, and then they're talking to her, having a conversation. They do everything in their power to convince her not to have an abortion. Hit the red button. We fly in. We do everything we need to do. Help her as much as we can if we need to, right? And then that's how it all works. It's like it's a marriage between a bunch of different organizations and a bunch of different people.
Right.
Yeah. So Nathan, we've got a few minutes left. Did that question come back to you?
No, but I think we've already covered this, but I guess we'll finish this off with how can people best get in touch with you? I mean, I know you're very prominent on Facebook and Instagram. Are there any other ways for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah.
You could call us directly, or text us. Like my phone number is 260-498-3415. We're pretty open and ready to just talk to anybody.
Yeah. And our email, like a good email, is info@letthemlive.org. And obviously social media, you can send us a message. That's, one of the easiest ways to get in touch with us. And yeah. And our website too, letthemlive.org. So you can check it out there. So.
Yeah, so I put the website link to Let Them Live in the I will put them in the show notes for the audio podcast, but I've also put them in the information section here under the YouTube video. So yeah, definitely a very worthy organization to get to know and to financially support. Emily and Nathan, thank you again for coming on and letting us interview you. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. And if you sit tight real quick, we can say our official goodbyes after we end the broadcast.
Okay.
So yeah. All right. So if you've appreciated this discussion, you found it beneficial, please share it around social media, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you frequent. You can find us also our web pages there on Facebook and Twitter. We've also joined MeWe, and I think we're getting a Parler set up as well. Unfortunately, Facebook doesn't always show all of our posts to everyone, so we started one on MeWe, and MeWe does share all of our posts to all of the people who've liked and followed our pages. So if you want to make sure you get all the information for the Pro Life Thinking podcast, be sure and like us there on MeWe as well as Facebook, and of course you can follow Let Them Live as well. So also you can find us on iTunes and blogtalkradio.com/prolifethinking. You can feel free to rate and review us there, especially to help counteract the pro-choice vote bombers that we've been receiving. And we have received some good ratings from listeners as well. We really appreciate that. Once again, you can help financially support the podcast by finding us on our Patreon page, which is also in the YouTube information section. Will be on our page as well. You can find us on Patreon, and you can also donate through Life Training Institute directly to have your donations be tax deductible. And of course, Let Them Live again is a very worthy organization. So please consider donating to them financially as well. Coming up next week, we're actually bringing on a mutual friend of Nathan and mine. I actually met her through Nathan. We're bringing on Rebecca Dyer, who is actually a colleague of mine in Justice for All. We're going to talk with her about how to have good conversations with pro-choice people without yelling, screaming, calling each other names, and tearing your hair out. So that'll be a good discussion as well. So on behalf of Nathan and Let Them Live, we'd like to